mit der Akzeptanz der 4 Grundfreiheiten und dazu gehört auch die Freizügigkeit der Personen. Brexit means Brexit.
Hello and welcome to another Brexitometer brought to you by the Martin Center. I'm Angelos and as always I'm joining you from King's College London. Spring has finally come, but Brexit is, believe it or not, in hibernation. The EU is waiting for the UK government to sort out its negotiating position before another critical summit in June and the deadline to agree the parameters of a future relationship in October. So the situation of hibernation will not last long, however. Soon Theresa May will have to make a choice as to what she will request from the EU, and at that point Brexit will be back with a bang. Until then, while politicians are trying to figure out the now, we are here to take a longer view and to discuss the tomorrow. So thanks to your questions, which we are receiving on social media, on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, using the hashtag Brexitometer, there's a lot of interesting issues that we can discuss today. Will we have an agreement by October? Will Theresa May survive as Prime Minister? And will Europeans continue to be able to travel to the UK as before? Your questions are back and I'm here to answer them. Let's go. Our first question comes from Angel Constantin, who is asking, what are the odds that we don't have an agreement by October, November? Now this is a very good question and one we thought we wouldn't have to ask after the agreements between the UK and the EU on the divorce and the transition. But with each passing day of no discussion between the UK and the EU, the possibility of no agreement is growing. What is happening right now is that the government of Theresa May is trapped between conflicting visions of economic relationship of the UK with the EU and also conflicting proposals and solutions about how to secure no border in Ireland, so to secure that there's going to be no visible border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland on the island of Ireland to preserve peace there. There are in essence 3 hurdles for a final agreement on UK's membership of the customs union and the single market and the Irish question and the future economic relationship between the UK and the EU. First, Theresa May has to find a solution that satisfies everyone in her cabinet. And her cabinet is 50-50 split between supporters of soft Brexit and hard Brexit. So she must find a way first to have everyone on board, and that's where she's trying to create some compromises. Then she must pass whatever agreement she finds in her cabinet through Parliament. She has to have all of the Parliament, all of her party, and as many other forces behind her as possible. And that is not easy because her party does not have a majority in Parliament, and there are already many people, either on the hard or the soft Brexit end, who say that if a proposal that the UK makes does not satisfy them, they will not support the government. And finally, she needs to find an agreement with the EU. So there's basically 3 layers of negotiation for Theresa May to come through in order for the UK to have an agreement by October. Now, will all of this happen before October? Perhaps it doesn't have to. Perhaps the UK government will settle on some kind of a position that is more closer to the hard Brexit end, so to exit the customs union and the single market, which is what hard Brexiteers want. But after an even longer transition period beyond December 2020 in order to satisfy soft Brexiteers. Then the agreement on the future relationship can be pushed back even beyond November 2018 and perhaps even beyond the date of Brexit in March 2019. So there's actually a bit of leeway there, and basically the idea is to tie in the compromise of a solution with an extension of its implementation. But right now, everything is predicated on Theresa May moving beyond square one, and she doesn't seem capable to do even this. Our second question comes from Harvey Morrison, and he's asking, will Theresa May survive the disagreements with members of her cabinet, like Boris Johnson and other kind of supporters of a hard Brexit? The answer here is probably she will, because who else will want to be in her position? After failing to win a majority in the 2017 election, Theresa May is essentially a Brexit zombie, alright? She's politically undead, But her sole purpose in life, or whatever you might call that, is to find a solution to Brexit that will inevitably leave everyone around her a bit dissatisfied, and some of the people around her very dissatisfied. So Theresa May remains Prime Minister because nobody else wants to go through negotiating with the Conservative Party, the Cabinet, the Parliament, and ultimately the EU. And also, very few people want to be associated with the inevitable costs of any agreement. So Theresa May's tenure as Prime Minister is already associated with her negotiation on Brexit. Once, remember, she confidently set the final date for UK to officially leave the EU on March 2019. And many people at the time thought that that was premature, but now ironically it appears to also be her own expiration date. So I personally expect Theresa May to be safe until early to mid 2019, but I also think she will be gone quite soon after that. She will be a Brexit Prime Minister through and through, whatever that may mean. A final question comes from Mikhail Bitsov, who is asking if Bulgarians, and I presume other Europeans, will need travel visas to travel to the UK after Brexit. Now this is a very good question because it reminds us that while politicians discuss Brexit, the consequences and the ramifications of Brexit will be felt by normal, everyday people who try to arrange their lives and take advantage of a more open and more easily and a Europe that is more easily to travel and move around. Now the real question here, of course, is when exactly the real Brexit will take place. Now remember, the two sides agreed on a transition until December 2020. That's 2.5 years. That's 2.5 years from now. And during the transition period, most everything will remain in place as it is now. So during this period, little will change about the capacity of Europeans to travel, live and work in the UK, although they must begin to formally register if they live and work in the country. Now we also know if this transition period will be extended because the two sides are not able to get an agreement on their future relationship. So Europeans may continue to travel relatively freely to the UK after December 2020 as well. Now, what happens after the transition is over? What happens once officially and practically and formally Brexit is in full force? It is generally important to distinguish between freedom of travel and freedom of movement. I personally think it's highly unlikely for Europeans to need an actual visa to travel into the UK after 2020, at least for tourism or a short period of stay and visit. Immigration policy will probably not work on the actual border at the point of entry of people into the UK, but it's going to work in the real economy, in the real world. So the access that Europeans will have to benefits from the state, the capacity to open a bank account, rent a house, get a job, be employed, and so on. So actually, I think that people will continue to be able to travel to the UK relatively easily. I believe and I hope that the UK will remain a relatively open country to visit after Brexit, but staying here for work will become quite harder and much more complicated than today for all those Europeans who are going to start visiting and coming to the UK after the end of the transition period. So that was all from this month's Brexitometer. A Brexitometer quiet and calm, like spring, and also like the state of Brexit, which is currently in waiting mode. But don't be fooled, things will become interesting again very, very quickly. The UK government will eventually make up its mind what to ask from the EU, and the pressing issues of the Irish border, the customs union, security cooperation, they will all reappear on Europe's political radar. Summer will be a period of political decisions, and fall will finally determine which direction Brexit will take. Throughout this period, of course, you have one steady companion to guide you through this process, Brexitometer. You can continue to send me your questions on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram using the hashtag Brexitometer. Lots of interesting stuff coming up. Until I hear from you and until I receive your questions, take care.
Mit der Akzeptanz der vier Grundfreiheiten und dazu gehört auch die Freiheitsmöglichkeit der Person. Brexit means Brexit.